Dawn Davis speaks out.
We're not going to stop fighting for Eastern North Carolina, no matter what map is drawn.
Just 24 hours after a new congressional map redraws his district, hear from the lawmaker whose seat is now in jeopardy.
A frosty start to your Friday is possible. Who's under a frost advisory and when we could finally get some rain?
And a suspended license for a crime she didn't commit. The DMV wouldn't help until she called Keely Arthur. And 5 on your side. We're going to start with the temperatures, though. Take a look at them outside right now. We are in the 60s, even over in the 50s. There in Chapel Hill, it is getting cold and getting cold fast, and it's only going to get colder. Thanks for joining us here at 7 o'clock. I'm Dan Haggerty. So it's going to get so cold, we have a frost advisory, a first one of the season. Meteorologist Kat Campbell joins us in the WRAL Severe Weather Center. Some people are going to see temps near freezing, Kat.
It's going to be cold not just tonight, but we'll probably have another frost advisory tomorrow night, with even colder temperatures coming our way. This frost advisory is from the Triangle, north and west. This goes from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Temperatures could dip as low as the low to mid 30s in spots, 33 in Roxborough and South Hill, mid 30s for Rocky Mount and Durham, 40 in Raleigh, 37 in Southern Pines tomorrow morning, but we could have our first 30s of the season in Raleigh by Saturday morning. 38 our forecast low. 31 in Roxborough, 38 in Fayetteville, 37 in Goldsboro. We could also see a couple more counties added to the frost advisory by Friday night. The drought status showing severe drought, unfortunately expanding across eastern North Carolina. With the drought expanding westward, I'll let you know when we'll finally get some beneficial rain, though, coming up.
We need it. Thank you, Kat. Tonight, we sat down with Democratic Congressman Dawn Davis for the first time since state lawmakers redrew the voting map for his district, making the map heavily favor Republicans. Almost impossible for Davis to be reelected, in fact. Davis represents part of our area and is one of just 3 black members of Congress from our state. Tonight, he wouldn't confirm what his next steps will be, but indicated he's not out of the game yet. WRAL's Heidi Kirk is joining us live from Goldsboro tonight after hearing from the congressman. Heidi.
Well, Dan, we actually wrapped up that interview with Congressman Dawn Davis right here at his Goldsboro office just within the hour. Now, he is one of the people that is targeted directly by these new maps, drawing him out of District 1 and putting him in District 3. Now, go ahead and take a look at your screens. You're going to see that new congressional map right here. Now, this map gives Republicans an advantage in 11 of the state's 14 congressional seats, up from 10. Now, it eliminates the state's only competitive district right here in District 1, turning it into a GOP-leaning seat. Now, we asked Congressman Davis if he plans to run again given this change. He wouldn't confirm, but he indicated he's preparing for a run. Now, he did express frustration when he learned of the plan to redraw the map, calling for an end to redistricting altogether.
One takeaway from all of this is we need a national ban on mid-decade redistricting. It doesn't matter, Texas, California, Missouri, Kansas. We just need to pull together and support an end to this. This is not good for anybody. It's not good for Democrats. It's not good for Republicans. It's not good for unaffiliated. The people lose when we do it this way.
Now, Davis did say that he will not fighting for the people right here in eastern North Carolina, regardless of his next steps. Of course, what exactly he plans to do is yet to be seen. Now, it's worth noting tonight that we did reach out to several of our Republican representatives to get their take on this. So far, we're still waiting to hear back. We'll have more tonight at 10 and 11. Heidi Kirk, WRAL News, live in Goldsboro.
All right, let us know what you hear. Thank you to Heidi. So you heard Dawn Davis's reaction. Today, we are learning about some other reactions from other groups and the possibility of a legal challenge on the horizon. WRAL's Sean Gallagher shows us these groups opposing this and feel that it's not only unfair, but unlawful.
Less than 24 hours after a new congressional map was passed under this roof, calls for change are now shaking the foundation of the People's House.
This effort is racist. It's an attack on black belt counties.
Bishop William Barber, surrounded by dozens of supporters, questioning this move by Republicans, taking the state's only competitive congressional district, currently led by a black Democrat, and turning it into a more Republican-friendly area.
If you know what racism smells like and looks like, a person can actually call you black, but you know when they're calling you the N-word. Because you don't judge it by the words of their mouth, you judge it by the action of their policies.
Nonpartisan analysis of this new map by the Princeton Gerrymandering Project gives North Carolina a failing grade.
It appears to be carefully engineered to give Republicans an advantage in the 1st District.
But as of now, it's a redraw that's legal. GOP leaders have repeatedly said they didn't use racial data to redraw this map, but analysts say they don't need that data to do so.
What we know also in North Carolina is that oftentimes partisanship and race intertwine very closely together.
A UNC study shows 73% of African-American voters are registered as Democrats in the state, while 88% of North Carolina Republican voters are white. It's an interconnection they plan to call into question.
It is not an accident that they chose CD1,
That's right.
that they chose the black belt. There are other districts. They chose this one for a reason, and we believe it's an attack on black voters.
An attack.
Is there anybody ready for one more battle?
They're ready to fight against.
One more battle. One more battle.
While all of this is going on right here, our neighbors to the north are looking to make changes of their own. Virginia Democrats say they plan to redraw their own districts that would benefit them by 2 to 3 additional seats, which would all but nullify what we're doing here when you look at the big picture. In Raleigh, Sean Gallagher, WRAL News.
All right, thank you to Sean. And for all of you at home who watch the top of this coverage and you're wondering, where are the Republican voices, right? We hear from a Democratic lawmaker, and then we're hearing from people who oppose this redrawing of the map. Well, we, again, as Heidi said earlier, reached out to Republican leaders, in the State House, Phil Berger, Destin Hall. We wanted any response that they might have against Barber's statements or things that Don Davis said. Again, we have not heard back, but we'll continue to ask those questions. Let's get you caught up now here. These are the 5 things you should know right now. No one will face charges for an off-campus party with thousands of people celebrating NC Central's homecoming. Sky 5 flew over the scene of this giant gathering in Person County last night. It created huge headaches for people living in that area. The sheriff's office is working with ALE, and NC Central didn't sponsor this party. A man went to the hospital after a chase in Wake County. Sky 5 caught the end of that chase between deputies and the suspect along I-40. The sheriff's office told us this all started when a deputy saw the driver speeding on the interstate. The driver eventually crashed into another car near the exit for Lake Wheeler Road. That suspect went to the hospital with minor injuries. Dry conditions helped spark another brush fire in our area. This is some video. It shows some smoke off GB Alford Highway in Holly Springs. We've seen several scenes like these in recent days. One lane of traffic was blocked off there for firefighters to get to work and get that fire out. Duke Energy is ramping up some efforts to improve the power grid. It's always important. This morning, it held a site visit for the emergency grid project. It was some wrong video there, obviously, but it was at the substation in Raleigh. Duke Energy is now in the middle of a 2-year effort, which includes more than 1,000 grid improvement projects across the state. There they are working. The goal is to improve reliability for customers while staying up to speed with all the growth we have seen in this area. UNC filed a motion to dismiss a lawsuit that accuses the school of breaking the law with the hiring of Coach Bill Belichick. The university calls the lawsuit filed by a former provost wasteful. Chris Clemens accuses UNC of violating open meeting laws multiple times to make academic and athletic decisions. The complaint says this includes closed sessions during the process of hiring Belichick. Clemens was the university's executive vice chancellor until he resigned from that position in May. 97 calls for help, 97, and no answers. That's what a woman in our state faced when the DMV threatened to take her license away for a crime that she did not commit. We're going to share how 5 on your side got her out of that jam. Plus, fish, whales, and face cards. They all go together as part of an FBI investigation, the gambling case that connects the NBA to the mafia. Well, we've got a crazy story for you tonight. A woman in North Carolina nearly lost her license because the DMV thought she did something wrong in Maryland. The catch is she hasn't been to Maryland in more than 20 years. She pleaded with people to get help with this, help that didn't come. Not until she called 5 on Your Side's Keely Arthur. Keely joins us now. Keely, give me an idea what happened here. Explain it to me.
Dan, I love that you call it a crazy story because that's exactly what this is. So a woman named Stephanie Layton, she lives in Mebane. She is a homeschool mother. She volunteers at her church. She rescues horses. She does not leave the state of North Carolina. So she was dumbfounded when she received a letter this September from the North Carolina DMV saying that her license was going to be suspended for a year because she had a speeding ticket issued in Maryland. And here's kind of the kicker. She went back to her Facebook and looked at the date where the ticket was allegedly issued. Well, she had been volunteering at her church that day doing a treasure hunt in North Carolina. And so this ticket was completely erroneous.
So I imagine she says to herself, I'm going to give somebody a call and get this all sorted out. But then she calls the DMV nearly 100 times and gets no answers, has to get a lawyer involved, still gets no answers. Why did she have such a hard time getting things cleared up?
Yeah, but I looked at her call logs between the calls to the North Carolina DMV and the Maryland DMV, 97 calls in total. And she paid a lawyer a $1,500 retainer. She had to get him involved because she wasn't getting anywhere with the DMV. When she called the North Carolina DMV, they said, okay, well, if that's really the case, you never got a ticket, you need to call the Maryland DMV and have them send a letter to us saying that. When she would call the Maryland DMV, they would say, we have no record of you even driving in the state. We can't produce a letter on this. She would call the North Carolina DMV back, explain what Maryland said, and then somebody, she says, in the North Carolina DMV's office said, look, basically you must have done something because there's a ticket here. If you looked closely at the ticket, though, there was no issuing officer, no normal details that would normally be filled out.
So again, this so-called crime happened in Maryland when she was not there. Why did North Carolina and our DMV here get involved in the first place?
Well, because they're the ones that were issuing the suspension. So we have a reciprocal agreement with other states, and including Maryland, which basically says if you receive a speeding ticket in another state, you can still have your license suspended in North Carolina. So they had to get the North Carolina DMV involved because they were the ones that were going to suspend her license. But ultimately, the glitch was with the North Carolina DMV. Basically, the glitch was with the Maryland DMV. The North Carolina DMV said that is what happened. It was basically someone on Maryland's end put in the wrong information, and just by the luck of the draw, there are more than 8 million drivers in North Carolina. It happened to this woman.
If you're getting Keely Arthur's lines crossed, you know this is overly complicated. This problem. What if this happens to me or you? What if this happens to somebody? What should they do?
Well, Dan, you know, with these stories, we always try to have like a consumer takeaway. What can you do to prevent this from happening to you? In this case, she didn't do anything wrong. She was just living her life and got this letter. So I think the resolution, the solve here really lies within both the Maryland DMV and the North Carolina DMV. North Carolina DMV telling me that they are taking this as a learning opportunity, and they're constantly reviewing this system to make sure it's more accurate.
That is frustrating. Boy. All right, Keely, good job. Thank you. If you are interested in what you heard here from Keely, if you want the full story, we have it available for you right now, WRAL.com. Just look for it in the consumer section. Let's move on now to another big story we have been following all day. Fish, whales, and face cards. We're not talking about going to an aquarium. We're talking about a federal sports gambling bust that's tying the NBA to the mafia. If you can believe it, it is a huge case getting national attention, summed up in our quote of the day. Today's quote of the day comes from FBI Director Kash Patel. That's how big of a deal this case has gotten. And he said, quote, "The fraud is mind-boggling." More than 30 people were charged today. The group is accused of orchestrating these schemes to rig sports betting and poker games, all connected to the mafia. Back to the fish and whales thing. The fish are the victims in this case. Prosecutors said that the suspects called the people who they could lure in and take millions from fish. They say if you had a bunch of money, then you were considered a whale, and both were targets. Some of the big names in the case include former Charlotte Hornet player Terry Rozier and Portland Trailblazer coach and former NBA player and college superstar Chauncey Billups. The FBI and Rozier used information about teams and players to cook up fraudulent bets. He's even accused of faking an injury so people could make thousands of dollars. We've talked about the fish and the whales. What about the face cards? Well, that's where Chauncey Billups factors in. According to the FBI, people involved in these betting schemes called Billups a face card. They say he was a big name, and he was used to lure in the fish and the whales to play poker. Those poker games were ultimately then rigged, according to the FBI. Federal agents say at one point Billups was winning so much he intentionally lost a few hands just to try to throw people off. So what is next? Billups and Rozier are both suspended from the NBA right now. Both face federal charges. The Trailblazers are currently in the process of getting sold, you might remember, and Canes owner Tom Dundon is the one who bought the team and is expected to take it over next year. Complicated much? A little bit. All right, Kat Campbell joining us with a simpler topic, and that's the weather that we're dealing with has been quite nice, except for the rain, which we need.
We need the rain so bad, so I'm actually really excited to talk about some rain. That holds off till next week, though. So if you've got outdoor plans this weekend, you are in luck. Let's talk temperatures really quick. It's rare I actually start with this map, but I do want to show you temperatures are falling according to plan. Mid-50s for Sanford, Clinton, Goldsboro, as well as South Hill, and 54 in Roxborough. This is why we could see some patchy frost overnight. Temperatures are falling fast. The wind dies down tonight. You've got clear skies, dry air, and light winds. The three things you need for a cold night here in North Carolina. But really not a cloud in the sky. Our system doesn't come together to our west until Sunday, and there's a couple different mechanisms that'll help to come together and bring us rain. First off, I want to point out this dip in the jet stream. That provides energy for these showers to develop moving in from the west. And then watch offshore. We could have a second area of low pressure that tries to come together in the form of a coastal low, both converging to bring some beneficial rain to North Carolina on Monday of next week. Some of that rain may end up sticking around Tuesday, Wednesday as well. And the rainfall totals over the next week have increased. We could see 1 to 2 inches of rain, and we will continue to update these numbers in the coming days. So check in for updates. But generally speaking, we're looking at the 1 to 2 inches of rain area. Now we need the rain. The drought's increasing. 15% of our state is in severe drought. That's in orange, so the eastern part of our area. Last week it was 4% of the state in severe drought. Now pretty much our entire viewing area is in at least moderate drought, and that includes all of the triangle. Let's talk about the tropics. Tropical storm Melissa continues to move slowly to the north-northwest at 2 miles per hour. This is going to be a bad one for Jamaica. I cannot emphasize that enough, as well as Hispaniola and even parts of Cuba looking at the threat of flooding rains. But Jamaica's going to take the worst of both the flooding rains and the winds from the storm. Winds expected to be over 140 miles per hour close to the island. And then you combine that with perhaps a foot of rain in the eastern part of the island. This is really going to create a extremely dangerous situation. So we're certainly thinking of the folks in Jamaica. Hopefully they can come to a solution, maybe even taking some people in flood-prone areas off the island. It really looks like it's going to be that bad, unfortunately. Your 7-day forecast looking good here locally over the next couple of days. More clouds roll in Sunday, and next week's rain is going to be chilly. High temperatures only in the upper 50s with that rain on the way, but I know a lot of us are glad to see it.
We are. Well, man, you got us thinking about Jamaica, though. We'll be paying close attention to that as that weather moves through. Thank you, Kat. One last thing is next, and it's a tribute to a hero. A 23-year-old man in Wake County has gone across the world on mission trips, served in the National Guard, and worked as an officer. It is a legacy worth remembering. We'll hear how officers are making sure no one forgets now 4 years after his death. One last thing for us tonight, and it's the legacy of a Wake County hero. We haven't forgotten Nightdale officer Ryan Hayworth. You better believe his law enforcement family has not forgotten him either. This is a picture of a bunch of the officers and deputies from around Wake County. They just wrapped up what is called Operation Hayworth. It is a traffic enforcement campaign done in memory of their fallen brother. Officer Hayworth died a little more than 4 years ago. He was on the scene of a crash when a driver who had been drinking and was apparently using drugs as well blew through the cones that were set up and hit Hayworth's SUV, throwing him out of it, and he would die from his injuries. He was just 23 years old. He spent plenty of that time serving others. He was in the National Guard, did a tour in Kuwait, went on mission trips for his church. He was the son of the Zebulon police chief. It's quite the resume for someone who was as young as he was. It's why the Knightdale Police Department pledges every day to live like Ryan.
His legacy helps us to all, remember that we are still living. There is a life that we can still commit to serving other people. And so that mantra of live like Ryan was sort of born from that idea that we take all that was good about his example, that we embrace that and we carry it on in our life and in our service to others.
That was the Knightdale Police Chief Lawrence Capps. He told us honoring Ryan means remembering him for the way that he lived rather than the tragic way where he died, where he was killed. Look around Knightdale and Ryan's imprints are hard not to notice. Thanks for being with us tonight on WRAL News. Have a great evening.